She wanted to meet me alone, on the beach. No one else around. Definitely a good sign. Tinder was supposed to be a wonderland of discreet, anonymous fun that awaited me after an extremely painful divorce. Instead, I found the opportunity to churn through more rejections in an hour that I could hope to tally after a year of social events and bar crawls. Then Tabby swiped right. I couldn't believe it at first. Cute, funny, employed, capable of driving herself. Pretty much everything that I was looking for in a Tinder match. And I won't lie, I have the same needs that everyone else with the app has. So she wanted to meet me on the sand at Hollywood Beach near Ventura, alone, far from prying eyes. It was the perfect match. Of course, I thought it was too good to be true at first. I was mostly convinced that she wouldn't be there when I showed up. So when I followed her cryptic instructions to take a specific path between two houses, following a beeline to the water, I expected to find nothing. With my phone flashlight bobbing in front of me, I was quickly surrounded by darkness. There's about 200 yards of sand between the houses and the water, so I soon felt like I was lost in the middle of a desert. No house lights were on nearby. I was entirely alone. I was just about ready to turn around. And then I saw her. She was lying face up in the sand. Tabby? She didn't say anything, but I knew it had to be her. No one else was within screaming distance, so I aimed my flashlight at her and walked straight forward so that I wouldn't surprise or scare her. Bizarrely enough, she remained lying down until I was standing right beside. Hi? I glanced down and smiled. She looked as good as her picture and better, which shocked me. She had on a red dress, which was splayed in the sand, that looked ready for a night out. Tabby was gazing up at the stars in an unblinking stare, but she reached for me and beckoned with a wag of her finger. I sat in the cold sand next to her, setting my phone down to allow just enough illumination so that we weren't completely blind. I hesitated for a moment before taking her hand in mine. She squeezed my fingers playfully before running her nails up my forearm, leaving a trail of goosebumps in her wake. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I hadn't had an intimate connection that left me truly happy in longer than I could remember. I didn't know why she just wanted silent touching, but decided not to question her motives. So I reached forward to stroke her cheek in the semi-darkness. Unlike her arm, Tabby's cheek was lukewarm. Her head turned away from me as I grazed it, continuing to rotate as she broke contact with my fingers. With a sound like pulling a shoe from a puddle of syrup on a wooden floor, Tabby's head twisted away from her neck and rolled onto the sand. There was just enough light to see the squishy viscera in her ravaged stump. I froze. For a moment, I could only sense the crashing of distant waves, cold sand beneath me, and Tabby's dead head. Movie deaths are always profound and dramatic. I didn't know how to process the fact that a human body can break with all the everydayness of a cracking egg. Then I noticed that her hand was gripping my arm. I stared in abject horror as her fingers continued to creep upward despite her lack of a head. Her other arm reached forward to join it. In fact, Tabby's entire body was squirming toward me. The sand beneath her neck moved, and everything made horrifying sense. Somebody was wearing Tabby's clothes. They had cut off her head, lay down on the beach, then buried their own head in the sand, placing her decapitated appendage above their own. I would have recognized it immediately in the daylight, but the darkness had hidden just enough. They wrapped both hands around my elbow and sat up as a cascade of sand rained down from an obscured face. I saw darkies looking back at me before pure instinct took over. I grabbed a fistful of sand with my other arm and threw it at those eyes. With an unnatural hiss, the grip on my elbow loosened just slightly, and that was enough. I yanked my arm away, scrambled to my feet, and raced into the darkness. Panicked Blur settled gradually back into cognitive stability. I could have been running for 19 hours or 13 seconds. I truly don't know. Of course, I hadn't wasted time grabbing my phone, especially since the bright flashlight was still on and would have made it impossible for me to hide. As a result, in the pitch black of the beach, there was no way to find my car, and in my sheer terror, I had no idea where I ended up. I found myself on a dark highway with no street lamps and no idea what direction I needed to go. I felt ready to scream. Had the entire world disappeared? Where were all the motorists? Almost as if an answer to my prayer, twin lights flashed far down the road. Adrenalous joy raced through me as I ran toward the lights, my shoes slapping against the ground as I sprinted forward. The car forced itself to a screeching halt just before slamming into me. I must have scared the shit out of the driver, but I didn't care. I raced to the passenger side window. It opened an inch. "Can I help you?" came a timid voice from inside. "Yes," I responded, almost laughing with relief. "I was attacked on the beach and lost my phone. Could you call the police and help me find my car?" The kindness of strangers really is the best of things. I reflected on this as we moved back down the highway, my tension finally melting. Shit, I must have looked terrible. I looked into the rearview mirror to check. Dark eyes looked back at me from the rear seat of the car. They were bloodshot, as though someone had just thrown sand in them. I spun around, convincing myself that it was all in my head, that I would find the seat empty. Someone wearing Tabby's red dress was lying in the back seat. I jumped out of the moving car just as a familiar hand reached for me. Yes, it hurt worse than anything I'd ever felt to hit the pavement at 30 miles an hour. But it didn't kill me, which was the only thing I needed to keep going. Fortunately, we'd already almost made it back to my car. I raced, or hobbled in great pain if I'm being honest, to my door. I jumped in, slammed on the ignition, and ripped out of there as fast as I could. I don't know how I made it home safely because I spent more time checking the back seat than I did with my eyes on the road. My horror only increased as I realized that I must have been texting this psychopath the entire time that Tabby was so intent on meeting me. How much did they know about my life? Of course, I typed all of this up to let you know as soon as I could, but I don't know if I'm safe. I think I just saw a red dress moving outside my window.